Hey folks, walk with me. Trauma is an overused term these days, which I wrestle with a little bit because it's been such an underutilized term for the last many decades, maybe forever, that, an overswing in the other direction makes sense and maybe isn't the worst thing if we can kind of recalibrate. But just to sort of all get on the same page here, people overuse trauma like, oh my God, my favorite NBA team lost the final. It was so traumatizing. And I know they probably mean that as a joke, but it does sort of put the concept of trauma and the word in and of itself in just an inaccurate light. And so what we're talking about here is not even an event, right? It's the wound that you're left with. That is the trauma. There's an event that caused a wound that never got healed, that never got processed, and therefore it remains an open wound. And then certain things can happen. Maybe it's sort of benign, if you will, for many, many years. And then something comes along, someone comes along, and it just pokes a finger right into that wound. And because it's still an open wound, it hurts a lot. And you have reactions that you weren't expecting. And then you sort of start to experience, though you may not realize, that this is coming from some trauma that you're carrying that you haven't processed. And so that's one way in which this can take shape, right? Something just sort of all of a sudden is just making you feel and think and act like a different person. And this can be something like getting married. It can be something like having children. Now, those things will change you in certain ways, but if it's changing you in ways that, first of all, you don't really like, and second of all, you can't really, it doesn't make sort of logical sense, if you will. There's no sort of thread that kind of just generally makes sense. It's sort of like, I don't know why I'm getting so bent out of shape about this particular thing. Or I don't know why I all of a sudden feel like I am panicking and I need to change everything about my life. This can even happen at certain sort of transition points in life, which I guess those are also kind of milestones, if you will. But it's like graduating from college and sort of coming out into the real world, retiring, anything along these lines can sort of make it sort of flare up out of nowhere and catch you off guard. Another thing is if you notice that you are sort of always more amped up than most people around you. In other words, you are potentially experiencing that trauma like it's still happening. That's often a key critical component of the trauma experience, is a sense of it's still happening. Literally, logically, it's not still happening, right? The event is not still happening. But again, because it's an open wound, something that hasn't been healed or processed in any meaningful way, it is still it is still an easy entry point for the harmful. If you think about a literal wound and how that would sort of look, it's the same idea. So having this sense that something horrific is still happening to you, something terrifying, something scary, something extremely hurtful, extremely angering is still happening to you. And then there's another one. If you have this generalized underlying sense of extreme sadness, isn't going to be a strong enough term, distinct despair, or extreme anger, right? That there is a fuse, a switch that can get set off in you that just makes you go livid. And it doesn't even mean that people have to experience that, right? People around you could say, I don't think this person ever gets angry. You could experience it without letting it impact other people. And it still is the same experiencing it, right? It still is the same, oh, I'm a very angry person. It's just I've found ways to never let it out or never let other people see it. Doesn't mean that you're not that angry or that despairing sort of person. And that is maybe another one that we'll sort of end on here, which is this sense of timelessness, whereby you kind of feel like when something happens that it's never going to end. Or like if you have the feeling or the sense that you are just always despairing, you're always really angry, and it will never end, that tomorrow's not a new day, in the sense of this person hurt you in your relationship, and now that relationship will never be the same. That timelessness element of it, I think, is oftentimes a really good indicator that you have some unprocessed trauma that is actually what's running the show here. I was going to say running in the background, but more accurately is just running the show, probably completely unbeknownst to you. And there are certainly many more. These are just some that I'm keenly aware of and wanted to share in the hopes that one person sees this video. There's probably less than 10 people who will watch this video, period. So even getting one person to watch it and have something sort of register with them that sets them on a path of exploration and maybe some form of healing or processing, that would be tremendous. And if that happens, one person, feel free to leave a comment. I know you might not want to because you might want to remain anonymous or whatever, but you could also send me an email, whatever. It'd be just really nice to hear something like that, if it happens. And if not, like I said, less than 10 people will probably watch this video. So hoping that one person, so a success rate of over 10%, is a high bar to hold this all to. But in any case, even if this isn't connecting with you in your particular experience, maybe it will register with a child in your life. Like you will notice those things from a child in your life, or a niece or a nephew, or maybe even a parent or a grandparent or a colleague at work. It could be anything that opens up the door for some level of, maybe you can't take direct action on it, but maybe even it just gives you a level of empathy and understanding, and gives you a different lens from which to look at this person and how they're presenting currently and what it may mean for their history. All right, folks, we got in nearly 9 minutes today. If you walked with me, it's getting very loud here. I don't know why all the traffic is happening, but so it goes. And no matter what, if you watch this far, I really appreciate it. And I will see you in the next video.